Will Canon finally announce the R1X, a high megapixel camera aimed at videographers, reminiscent of the 1DC, which you'll recall Canon targeted towards television and the motion picture market? And if so, if we will see an R1X, will we see it in 2025? Or is Canon doubling down on 24 megapixels for their flagship camera? But first, I have a simple and yet humble request. Please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, it helps this channel grow, and it keeps you informed on the latest camera gear. At CP Plus last month, Megapixels asked Canon if they're coming out with a high-resolution version of the R1, a video-centric version, essentially a camera with similar specifications to the Nikon Z9. Unlike previous interviews at CP Plus, cue the third-party lens manufacturing whole conversation, Canon's been pretty clear at CP Plus about the R1X. Let's go ahead and take a look at this first of several quotes. We consider the flagship to basically be at the pinnacle of our lineup, which means we're not going to have two flagship models because we're basically putting everything that we have, the best performance and the best trust, into the EOS R1. So I would say that we would probably never consider developing another model using the same body as the EOS R1. Now there are some weasel words in there, such as we would probably never consider using the same body as the R1. You could take that, and I've got several other quotes which is really going to kind of double down on what Canon's saying here. But the real question is why? Why would Canon never consider doing something like an R1X? I mean, after all, they did do it with the 1DC. And Nikon certainly wasn't afraid of pursuing a 45 megapixel high-resolution stills and video powerhouse aimed at pros, their flagship mirrorless camera. But for many, including Josh Holku, who's a professional wildlife photographer, the EOS R1 with 24 megapixels is more than enough and delivers amazing results, delivering noise-free images at high ISO levels in low light conditions. And Canon touched on this. For example, if we have higher resolution, then we know that that's going to skew the balance. And the sensitivity? Well, it's going to be lower. That is a physical mechanism. So in a flagship, we would never focus on just one aspect of the performance. That would destroy that balance. I believe our current strategy is to have the 5 series be responsible for that higher resolution quality. And it's starting to make sense now, because if we look at the R5 Mark II, what we're starting to see is a camera that isn't bound by the 1 series. Now if we go back to, let's say, the 1DX Mark II and the 5D Mark IV, what we can see is that, at least when it comes to video, the 1 series provided better video capabilities than the 5 series. Whereas today, we're finding that the 5 series, which is by design by Canon, is offering better video capabilities. The 5 series is all about higher resolution, not just for stills, but also for video. So when it comes to the R1, it's all about delivering a much higher performance and trust in the autofocus system, in delivering photos, images in low light conditions in high ISO with virtually no noise. And that's what we can see by Josh's images here. They're incredible. I can tell you, shooting in the Arctic in snowy conditions, you're shooting in low light conditions, especially when it's minus 50 outside. Perhaps it comes from a sense of Canon's integrity, or doing what they believe will deliver the best results instead of just chasing specs. Canon says that their focus on the flagship is to provide the best possible performance and be the best and most trustworthy. Additionally, if you think of the history of the R1, I think we're in the 19th generation of the 1 series. So there's a lot of history behind this, and as part of that process, we have been evolving every aspect of the performance throughout the years. So that's really been our guiding principle in the development of the R1 all the way. I kind of got a feeling that the 1DC was, well, an experiment, a misguided experiment, at least according to Canon. we're not going to see a video-centric, nay, a cinema version of the 1 series, at least not according to Takura-san, Canon's executive vice president in charge of the imaging group, with him going further saying that at the same time, we've also placed a lot of value in the things that we should not be changing. And one of those things is operability. We know that the professionals have been working with these cameras for a long time, and we want to make sure we don't lose the familiar operability that they've become accustomed to. So that's really the fundamental value that we have in the development of our flagships. And going back to Joshua Halku, when I interviewed him, it was pretty evident how much he depended on his gear in temperatures going down to minus 50 degrees Celsius, how reliability and operability mattered. And not only operability in those cold temperatures, but the low light capability of the R1, well, that matters far more than having more megapixels. Some will disagree with this, well, vision that Canon has for the flagship models. And I get that. I mean, I shouldn't have to state that. We all have different viewpoints. We all have different use cases and different scenarios. I mean, if we didn't, we'd all be clones of each other. And despite what you might hear and read elsewhere, there's nothing wrong with having different viewpoints of the same view. There's nothing wrong with it at all. All I'm doing here is conveying to you what Canon's thinking about their flagship camera. So all that talk about a cinema version of the R1, it's not going to happen. If you're looking for high resolution photos and stills, well, you're probably going to see that at the 5 series. That's what Canon's telling us. But one thing we might also see is it breathes new life into the R5C. No longer does it have a rather strange place. When it first came out, we thought, well, okay, we got the R5C, but then we're going to have the R1, which is going to have even better video specifications. So does it make sense to have an R5C? Well, according to what Takura-san has said, it certainly looks like there's an awful lot of justification for not only the 5 series that we see in the R5 II as a high-resolution camera, but also the R5C. What do you think? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I found this rather interesting because for the last couple of years we've been told about this master of everything, jack of all trades camera, leading us to believe that Canon was going to produce the R1 very similar to what Nikon did with the Z9, and similar to what Sony did with the A1 and the A1 II. But that's certainly not the case here. It's interesting, and I do get it. I understand Josh's viewpoint and Craig's viewpoint. That's why I don't have the R1, because I'm not a sports and wildlife photographer. It doesn't make sense for me to own that camera. I look at the R1 and I look at the R5 Mark II, and the R5 Mark II, it makes an awful lot of sense to me. It calls to me. I think it's a terrific camera. I'm really curious to know what you think about that. Interesting. I don't know where to end this video. You know what? I think that's a perfect place to end this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching, for supporting this channel. And by the way, you might want to pick up on my new Insider membership level. That's where I take you behind the scenes and talk a little bit more about what goes on when I'm shooting these videos in my various studios. I take you into a view, and also I just talk to you behind the scenes, uncut, unpolished, and ad-free. Anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great day, a great night, and we'll see you again soon.